Welcome to Idle Red Hands Weekly. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Chris.
And what is Idle Red Hands Weekly? It is the year 10,191. The known universe is ruled by the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV. In this time, the most precious substance in the universe is the spice melange. The spice extends life. The spice expands consciousness. The spice is vital to space travel. The Spacing Guild and its navigators, who the spice has mutated over 4,000 years, use the orange spice gas, which gives them the ability to fold space. That is, travel to any part of the universe without moving. The spice exists only on one planet in the entire universe, a desolate, dry planet with vast deserts. Hidden away within the rocks of these deserts are a people known as the Fremen, who have long held a prophecy that a man would come, a messiah, who would lead them to true freedom. The planet is Arrakis, also known as Dune.
And that connects to 2020 how?
I was looking at the upcoming, or most anticipated. There's a vote on N-World for the most anticipated RPGs. And this was announced in 2018. I saw that Modiphius is doing a 2D20 Dune RPG. So it's anticipated for this year. Okay. But I think it's quite a challenge. The previous Dune RPG was the Dune Chronicles of the Imperium.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, from 2000. Well, yeah, I think if you haven't heard of it, you're not geeking hard enough because...
all right. My geek cred is apparently questioned, and it's how many weeks into the new year? Okay.
It was done by Last Unicorn Games, who was later bought by WotC, and they only released 3,000 copies, which are basically only sold at game conventions, Gen Con, and some European conventions. So not too many people have a physical copy of the book. And it's a D6 kind of dice pool system that the reviews that have talked about it have said, yeah, it kind of works. You know, it's not not real strong reviews. And I think the only other system or major setting that it was used for was like a Star Trek Next Generation game. But so there hasn't really been a big kind of, tabletop release for the Dune setting. So I'm really curious what they're going to do. And they've done a really good job of making their 2D20 fit, like with Star Trek or John Carter. So this is going to be a challenge. And I want to see what that system's capable of and if it's playable. Because, there's a very political setting, but then there's also a lot of
mysticism.
Yeah, mysticism and a lot of, odd powers that are not really magic. It's going to be, so it'll be a real complicated, but hopefully fun and, engaging place to play in, but we'll see.
Right. Yeah. No, what you said about Modiphius's 2D20 systems being really well adapted to whatever property they are kind of designed for makes sense. The last time I read Dune was in high school. I remember sitting in like freshman orientation with the Dune book, and I'm sure a lot of stuff escaped me at the time since I was a teenager. Watched the David Lynch movie and kind of like it. I've not seen the sci-fi original or whatever after that, but what I remember of Dune, it seems like there's a big emphasis, in addition to like politics and the mysticism, on generational play. Because like every book is kind of like so many generations in the beginning and after, and what the Bene Gesserit caring about like bloodlines and all this stuff. Right. So there are a couple of games out there that do care about generational play. I think like Pendragon is a really famous one. That like Legacy, like maybe like Life After the Ruins kind of game that we were looking at, and maybe I'm getting that title wrong, has generational play. I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm saying I wonder what a Dune game that doesn't focus on generation play would look like, and if you could do it. And you're certainly not doing multiple factions, or I don't know how you would do that. Like you're not going to play a Fremen, Harkonnen, like House Atreides, and someone gets to play a Spice Guild Navigator, because that game is just not going to work.
A ragtag bunch.
Yeah, exactly. I think, again, I don't know that much about the Dune setting, and I want to go back and reread it. It doesn't seem like you could do that ragtag bunch of scrappers on the outside of the universe, because everything's an empire.
Yes.
I don't know, maybe you could, because it's kind of Warhammer 40k-ish in that there's this solidified emperor and church and kind of stuff. But 40k still has rogue traders out on the edge of space. But my thought process there is, if you try to do that in Dune, are you playing a Dune game?
No,
I would say no.
Right. No,
so,
I think that's true.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what they come up with.
No, I think it is a challenge. It's a challenge to make the characters feel like they're in the book, and also because so much was so mysterious. Like especially Paul, like he had all of these visions of his future, and it was that's an impossible character to play in an RPG.
It is, unless you give them the my God, I can see all the way through time, every possible future. In which case, like the character goes insane. Right? I mean, like how could you not? And how would you do that in an RPG? I guess you could say, that's one future you saw, you change stuff enough to where it doesn't happen. But then you would have to give them some kind of future prophecy thing. And time travel in TTRPGs is messy.
But this coincides with, so Gale Force 9 acquired the rights to Dune for gaming.
Okay,
and
board game stuff?
Yeah, so they released, so they are sharing with Modiphius the rights for doing this tabletop RPG, and they also re-released the board game.
Yeah,
so
I've seen a lot of people talk about that,
Yeah, so I guess it's just a reskin, basically, of the original, more cardboard token based. Well, I guess it is still tokens. So this might be the year of Dune because we're also getting the remake this year. Denis Villeneuve is doing a remake of Dune. You haven't heard?
I have not.
Oh, and the casting is really interesting because previously Dune is just very Caucasian, and even the Fremen, they're all and so. But what it looks like, and especially because there's so much flavor of like the Middle East, like they refer to jihad, and it's a desert planet and things. So this is going to be a cast that looks much more like what maybe future humans would look like. Like it's better cast in that way. I like, especially for Blade Runner 2049. Yeah, Blade.
Don't get me started on that. Sorry, continue.
But the visuals.
Okay.
I think he's capable of doing that, making something interesting, because that's the kind of catch of Dune in the books. Things are not described particularly in particular detail.
Right.
So you get this, especially for illustrators, book illustrators, like the covers always seem like, 60 sci-fi, I can do that. And everything has this weird Art Nouveau kind of thing to it. And even the font that they write Dune in, you're always like, really? You're going to go with that?
Okay, yeah. I can picture it now. It's got all kinds of like weird hooks and spikes and swirls coming off the letters. Yeah.
So this will be the year of new Dune, I guess, and we'll see how that goes. But there's also, Dune has the difficulty of, his son kind of took the ball.
I have read some later novels.
And those might be good inspiration for the RPG because they're more action-based and not as esoteric and philosophical. They're much more like action movie.
Right.
It may be good, maybe bad, and it may have screwed up the canon so much that really what is Dune, like you're going to have trouble figuring out what is and isn't in this universe. The documentary, don't think anybody's seen it from the podcast, but the Jodorowsky's Dune, the Holy Mountain
I've not
director.
seen it.
Okay. Yes. So in the 70s, I think, a Spanish director put together the most insane production of Dune, and it almost happened. So
it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. Okay. But it almost did. The Emperor was going to be played by Salvador Dali.
Okay.
Paul Atreides was going to be Mick Jagger. Okay. There is casting, like it just blows your mind, and it almost happened. Like it was so close to being funded, and so the story of the making of that movie. But the interesting thing, or the kind of compelling thing about that documentary, is the production people that he put together basically stayed together and were responsible for Alien.
Oh, cool!
And there's a lot of recognizable names that kind of stayed in the industry and did visualization and pre-production for a lot of very well known 80s movies.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
But we should definitely watch that sometime during this year of Dune. That's something that didn't get mentioned in the what's interesting and upcoming. But this is going to be a lot of Dune this year. We're going to see probably
prepare yourself for a bunch of spice jokes.
Yeah, right. But speaking of 2D20, there was also Modiphius just released to all the Kickstarter backers, and I think now it's available on the Drive-Thru RPG, a PDF that is a Conan to John Carter conversion kit.
Okay, cool.
And I was like, okay, so why would you want to do this? Like, but it goes both ways.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can make Conan more pulp, or you can make John Carter more straightforward RPG.
I have not read the Conan book in depth. The phrase turning Conan more pulp makes me look horribly askance at the Conan book, because what is supposed to be more pulp than Conan?
Right. Yeah, I think that's true. They went a little more traditional, fantasy RPG with the stats and everything for.
Yeah, when I was reading the notes, it was unclear which direction it went, and I'm like, I would be very interested in seeing Conan translated to the John Carter of Mars system. Mm-hmm. Much less interested in seeing John Carter of Mars translated over to the Conan system.
Right. Also this year, or actually just recently, another big IP that got a Netflix series, The Witcher, has a tabletop version. There's a tabletop book for it. And they just announced it's sold out. The core book, the first run of the core book has sold out for The Witcher. I think that series really brought a lot of people around to that property because a lot of people are actually playing the game. They said the active number of people streaming and playing The Witcher 3 is off the charts. And it's a 4-year-old game, so it's been around. People could have noticed it by now.
I'm aware of the franchise. Mm-hmm. My Twitter feed has been nothing but Witcher stuff since the series dropped. And I knew there was a tabletop role-playing game. Mm-hmm. That's about the extent of my knowledge of it. It's nice to hear that the Netflix series has boosted, I guess, sales and, as you said, streams of both the video game and the tabletop game.
Right.
Because more exposure to the hobby in general is a good thing. I've been debating whether or not to actually watch the series.
So the game the CD Projekt Red did a good thing because they
once.
looked at the books for once. They looked at those books and they said, okay, this is going to be a sequel to those books. So the Geralt.
Oh, you mean the series?
Yeah,
the Netflix series.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
The Netflix series is based on the books.
Okay.
Which is a mistake.
Okay.
The game makers made a good choice by making it a sequel. So Geralt is dead at the end of the last book. But death is kind of a amorphous thing.
Right,
You're in kind of just another plane. And so he comes back with amnesia and then can reintroduce himself to all the characters. So there's no problem with like previous relationship or anything. He's just a blank slate. So that works well for the video game. And they got out of so much storytelling problem, which the Netflix series just ran into head on, and it's a real mess because the first book is just a collection of short stories.
Oh, interesting.
So it's just like choosing the first 5 Conan stories and trying to make those into a movie. And it's like, well, wait, he's a king, and then he's
right. You're talking about like the first 5 chronologically released Conan stories where they all just bounce around intentionally.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the problem with these stories, and they try to tell, and they don't do anything to make you curious about why is this so strange, or to give you any clues about the clues are very small to tell you what time frame you're even in. So you see characters again. I just saw them die. Okay, now they're alive, and the actors I don't think were given enough information, so they're acting. They're playing different characters almost, and you're not recognizing them. You're like, wait, that was the queen? She's not even, what? Okay, so what? Wait, what happens? And so they want to construct it so it has a nice narrative flow. So basically, Geralt is pursuing this girl who he's linked to, and they're telling the story, but most of the parts of the story that they're telling that looks like he's in pursuit of her are actually happening decades apart, like 30 years apart.
Okay. Wasn't expecting that much time.
And you're just like, whoa. And they make odd reference to it. It's like, oh, it's been 30 years. And like, wait, what? There has been nothing established. And even if you're obsessed with the books and if, play through all of the game to kind of get, because they do reference in the game some of the situations and people and events.
Okay. Well, they kind of have to.
Yeah, he comes back to them kind of blank. It's real messy. Yeah, it's a really odd, and also the CG in the Witcher Netflix series is kind of like placeholder. Yeah, you're like, okay, so they're going to put better stuff in later, right? Oh,
so they're going to patch it like cats. Is what you're telling me.
I wish they could. Yeah, but it's real. You feel the budget there really severely. Just like, oh, wow, that's a dragon. Nice. It's like the 90s, like Hercules, or anytime there was any CG in like a 90s TV show, you're like, oh, wow, okay.
Hey, you know what? Watching those as a teen, you're like, oh, this is pretty good. Right. Looking at it now, you're like, yes. Yeah. In that case, I'll probably give The Witcher a pass because one of my resolutions for 2020 is don't consume trash media. Or media I think will be not to my taste or trashed, which means I'm no longer listening to certain audiobooks.
Oh,
I've tossed them in my recycling bin specifically so I do not watch them.
Nice. Yeah, there's good moments. There's good pieces of story and good moments, like good individual episodes, but as a whole, it's not really satisfying how it was too big of a obstacle, and I think very quickly it feels episodic. But is
that a problem though?
It's serial, but no, it is a serial story. But it's
intended to be.
I think it's
episodic, but intended to be serial, and so it kind of doesn't work.
Yeah, it has to it has a climax, and they're following the story through. But if they went for kind of making the best episodes to represent these short stories possible without trying to be to kind of connect storylines, I think it would have been more satisfying. Right. And the tone, especially in the games, which the author hates, but the games have a specific tone, and Geralt's kind of a crude, weird guy that would work better in episodes and just like, oh, let's see what he's confronted with this time. But you're really confused about, is he being kind of set to 0 at the end of this adventure, or he's going to go on with this kind of damage, or what's going on? Yeah, there's some nice things about it, but yeah, overall, it's a bit of a swing and a miss as far as like trying to. Who knows who's going to be able to actually portray these? If you did them just as a movie, it would be insanely difficult because that's just not enough time. But The Witcher is popular now, and people don't seem to have a problem. And maybe it's fun because it's such a mess, you can get on the internet and dig through and say, oh, so, you can find out the details. But for me, it didn't compel you to be curious about that stuff. It was just like, only if you have like, OCD or something, I need to know why that horse is not in this scene.
Or do you kind of think it's what I feel like maybe some movies are now, where if it's based on a franchise, if you already know and enjoy that franchise, you're going to enjoy finding all the little like Easter eggs and stuff in the new series. And if you don't really know about the franchise, you're just kind of like, eh.
Yeah, I think, that might be the case. And that seems to be a real popular way. I really hate that when an episode comes out, the Easter eggs in episode 12. It's just like, I don't, why, what? Yeah, so that's a kind of media now and a kind of, YouTube video or article that people write.
I guess bring it back to TTRPGs and how we've talked before about system mastery and how some people don't switch games or invest in a certain games because they've devoted a certain amount of time to this thing and they want that time to be well spent. Maybe that's kind of the desire to dig through media to find those Easter eggs is kind of the same thing, where you've invested an amount of time into a fandom and you want that fandom to be, or you want that time to be valuable or time well spent. And so you do that to prove that it was time well spent. You dig through media to find all those little bits and continuity, either issues or problems or things that worked or didn't, that people outside of the fandom wouldn't recognize as a way to show I know what I'm talking about and what I did was kind of valuable.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Yeah, that may be how people are facing a lot of things that they're fans of. And because people do seem to be very loyal to their fandoms now, yeah.
Well, kind of like I said on... like I've had to remind myself sometimes, criticism of something you like is not criticism of you personally. And I guess the whatever connected to that is you are not the media you consume, and that can't be the extent of your personality, or shouldn't be.
Right. Yeah, and unfortunately, online, that's the best way to kind of represent yourself. And even like the very earliest social media, it's like, okay, list the books, your favorite books, list your favorite movies, and that was like the first thing people saw about you.
I can understand because like it's a useful shorthand for explaining a personality or the things you are into, your likes, but that's not the total of what you are. So,
anything happened to you over the holidays?
No, I was mostly just watching my kid, babysitting my kid in a different place up with the in-laws. Didn't really have time to read much. I had planned to like read more Alien RPG or read more Beneath a Cursed Moon. Didn't really have a chance to do that. When it came back, I started consuming good media. Lost in Space, season 2, finally dropped.
Nice. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, the end of that first season didn't leave me wanting any answers, so it's like, there's this season.
Fair enough. Fair enough. It wasn't like a super cliffhanger, but I enjoyed season 1 enough where I said I'd like to see more of these people interacting and doing stuff
and get away from the other people. I just want that family.
Well, yeah. I put it into TTRPG, looked at it through a TTRPG lens, and I said, I wonder why I like this, because certain episodes in season 2 kind of felt alien-ish, where I'm like, we're hiding and sneaking around through the air ducts on a ship from something. And while not terrible, why did I not like this episode? And I realized it's because I like the human versus nature conflicts we had a lot in the first season.
Right.
Because they're issues you can't stab, shoot, hide from. It's like, like I said, you can't stab freezing temperatures or shoot not having fuel. And looked at through a TTRPG lens, it's great. All these non-combat skills that almost never get used, like biology, chemistry, geology, math, engineering. Let's use those to solve the problem. And I really liked the series kind of focus on that. So while there were a few episodes in season 1 that were a bit kind of Monster of the Weeky, overall I liked we're stranded on a planet and we're going to have to use these non-combat skills to survive. And stuff was dramatized because it's a TV drama. Right. So you're like, and now the planet's freezing. And now this is happening. But like, sure, I'm not going to say it didn't feel realistic because who knows what an alien's planet is going to be like, so we have no baseline.
Right.
But yeah, it's intentionally dramatized. So season 2 kind of seems to be getting a little better. I'm only like 5 episodes in, but there's been a few too many Monster of the Weeky alien things so far. Yeah. So I'm hoping it gets better.
Is Parker Posey still a good Dr. Smith?
Yes, and I've said like that is a great way to portray a villain in TTRPGs, because even when it comes out that everyone in the group knows she's a liar, she essentially gaslights them all into never knowing whether she's lying or telling the truth, and still being indispensable to that group, where it's like, we don't like you, we know you're a liar, we still need your help. And I think rather than like twirling your mustache and blowing everything up because you're a villain, I think that's a that's a great example of kind of a villainous or selfish character to then play in a TTRPG group. And it made me think a lot about the Alien RPG secret agendas.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you could definitely come up with some interesting things, especially, okay, you're exposed yourself as this, now you do this, you've been exposed as this, yeah.
I think that's what it is. Like the other players or the other characters in the show were always questioning her motive. And sometimes it was like the good of the group, and sometimes it was the good of herself, and keeping them off balance, never really knowing.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, she was a real
long answer for it's good.
Good. That's good. Yeah. I'm curious about that because she was a real highlight from the first season for me. So I wanted to see if that still holds true. I had a minor after Christmas miracle
wallet explosion.
Well, that too. So it was a little shocking. I stopped at the Warhammer store in Namba, and they had an English copy of the Sisters of Battle box, the instantly sold out initial set of the Adeptus Sororitas plastic release. So that includes the codex and cards and everything. It's a nice deluxe set. And it was impossible to order, was crashing the website. But I noticed in Japan, the Japanese language version stuck around for about a month on the web store. So I guess it's not very popular here. There's not a lot, not a lot of Japanese players interested in that faction. And I went in the store and saw the box physically on the shelf. Oh, the Japanese one, and behind it, English. And unfortunately, so I did a quick check, and it's a little cheaper than the scalper price, but it's still pretty pricey in Japan. Not as bad as Australia, probably, but Japan still has a little kind of luxury tax, kind of idiot luxury tax on Warhammer here. But I picked it up. It's gorgeous. I really like the sculpts. Still not quite as bad as the Metal Sisters, but still in the lore, they're beautiful women.
Are they?
They established that these are striking, beautiful women, and some of those sculpts don't reflect that.
Well, I'm not going to say you're wrong. I'll have to go back and look, because concurrently, before I even showed up today, I had been thinking about doing an Adeptus Sororitas TTRPG similar to what I did with Deathwatch.
Oh, yes.
And because of that, I was interested in let's see if I can find notes of the newly released codex.
Right.
And then I walk in the door recording, and I'm like, oh, hey, look, there's the box. Isn't that a coincidence? Wow, it's great. But so I've been reading up on the lore again. Maybe I was looking at the wrong thing. I don't remember them being specifically called as being beautiful. However, this is also the company that made Slaanesh Demonettes, those weird bug-eyed, horrible-looking tentacle things where you're just like, okay, it must have soporific must because that thing's ugly as sin. Right? Except for the 6th edition ones, where whatever, those things were great, where they were actually I understand why they disappeared because they were actually naked. But you're just that's what they're supposed to look like on those sinuous steeds of Slaanesh. And those are great. And now they're gone.
Yeah.
But no, I was talking about wanting to see female Space Marines, and specifically saying I didn't want to see skinny pinup posed one-hand pistol shooting Space Marines, where the only thing you would need to do for female Space Marines is give them female-ish looking heads.
Right.
Because
the armor is not revealing.
Think about the super awesome HRT process they go through with all those organ implantations and chemicals pumping through their body. Anyone who goes through that process, regardless of gender, is going to look like a big hulking organic machine of muscle.
Well, the female Space Marines would definitely have a bare midriff, though.
Of course. Yeah. Part of the reason I didn't want to see the boob power plate armor thing is because we have Sisters of Battle, and I'm kind of okay with them because I get the sense they're kind of from the old style 40K that was satire, where you can't look at power armored boob plate high heel wearing things that spikes and chains all over and go, yeah, that's reasonable. You're no, this is extremely ridiculous.
Yes.
And that's kind of the point. But now Sisters of Battle are one of my favorite factions, and I am no way in hell getting sucked back into playing a miniatures game. So if you want to paint those up, and I will gladly play Kill Team with you.
Nice.
However, I will not be buying my own.
Right. Yeah, it's nice that they released Kill Team rules already for Sisters. So that will be
I haven't seen those. I will definitely be looking at those as well.
Yeah.
Nice. I know it's fictional, but I really kind of like the Tolkien-esque I am no man middle finger to that passive decree about, great, okay, church, no men in arms. And they go, we're women, so screw you.
I was excited to see this. And they're supporting, at the beginning of this year, there's a lot more releases for this army. But one thing that I noticed that felt a little Age of Sigmar, and it's something I hope this isn't the trend. I can kind of see why they're doing it, especially because of the price point. But they're doing a Triumph of St. Catherine miniature, which is basically
that like giant diorama centerpiece thing?
Yes. Yeah. So basically it's a processional holding the remains of St. Catherine and a reliquary. And it's, multiple figures on a staircase, basically descending on this giant, like flyer-sized base. And that was something that they had already done with the Ossiarch Bone Reapers. Like a few of their kind of command kind of centerpieces were multiple characters all on one base.
Is that all that different from what they've done in the past, though? Because I'm not up on Age of Sigmar. I have seen those kind of like big base things, but thinking of like the Dark Elf Blood Chalice, where it's this like giant goblet with like multiple figures in it, or even for the 4th edition Dark Eldar, like that commander flyer thing that had like the loincloth slaves and chains on it and stuff. So is that really all that different from what they've done in the past?
Well, I think the thing that's odd about it is, especially with the Bone Reaper miniatures, multiple characters on a base. So basically, it's like, okay, and now this guy has this ability, and this guy. I guess St. Catherine's a little bit better because it probably just has an area of effect. Right, it probably is just like you're buffing with it. You're not actually, because it's a processional, but it's a thing that Mantic originally decided to do with their fantasy setting, where they said, okay, you don't have to pull miniatures off, so just make a base that's the dimensions of what that force would be, and then do whatever you want to with it. Put like 5 guys on there on top of a hill, whatever. That's going to count as an army of 60 troops. Okay. They did that because you don't remove miniatures, you just keep track of
wounds
fatality, wounds and stuff with dice. So I don't know, but this felt a little more. I mean, it's appropriate, I think, for this army because they have a lot of really gorgeous, very Baroque, very ostentatious.
Put more skulls on it.
Yeah, right. Miniatures, especially their transports and tanks and things, are just very overdone. But that's creating. I mean, the miniatures are getting close to $200 each once you start doing this, because it's like having a Primarch. It's like those giant Primarch models when they're bringing the demon princes and everybody back. They're these huge centerpiece models, and I don't know. I mean, it's starting to feel, and there's also hints that the next edition, if it's going to be 8.5 or 9, is going to be basically Age of Sigmar. They're going to start to, because now they're also including the mechanic of persistent spells. I forget I think that's not what they're called, but it's a miniature that represents a spell.
Oh yeah,
so you cast something and then it runs around on the battlefield and exists as a miniature. So they're starting to do that in 40K. So they're just going to start blending the two systems together.
I guess from a company standpoint, I don't see the problem with that, because why not kind of streamline everything and do it? And I guess since Games Workshop is a miniatures / kind of like war game thing, those huge $200 models are probably real attractive to hobby and modelists.
Yes.
And so you kind of have to cater to both groups. And I kind of see it like back when I collected Magic, and you had like the 3, now 4 different types of players, kind of like the person who liked those like big smashy creatures, the person who wanted to like combo, and the person who wanted to just kind of make a tournament deck. And I remember reading an article where it says like we have to cater to all those people, and that really clicked in my brain about why I would be very disappointed at some of the cards in the packs that I would open. I'm like, oh, you built this because you're catering to this type of player, and these cards are catering to this other type of player, and because you can't make separate products for those people, you kind of have to put everything all together. So I get it now. So I kind of look at Games Workshop in the same way, where it's like we're both, and people like more or less of the war game / hobby thing, and we kind of have to do this so that everyone is marginally happy.
And it might be a way to kind of reinforce their lead, because the technology, the quality of their miniatures, the ability of their sculptors is beyond what a lot of other people are doing. Right. So it's like, you can't do this now, can you? No one's, so you can make dioramas with other miniatures from other companies, but they're not going to give you kind of a elaborate, gorgeous, pre-made, really amazing. So it might just, they're trying to reinforce their kind of top dog position and say, this is as good as it gets, like with our technology. Right. So it may be some of that, but it's odd because I really enjoy, for the painting contest, the kind of inventiveness and the creativity of the hobby. The painter made dioramas, and it's like, wow, you really came up with that. It's like, now you're going to have these pre-made dioramas that are going to be,
You say that, and yeah, it's true, but I guess I kind of look at it like a tool for any kind of art, where it's like, okay, and now we have this other thing in our arsenal we can do, and let's wait let's see what like the really skilled modelers do with these new bits and pieces. So,
oh, that's true, because you could actually reassemble those.
I'm sure some people are just going to put them together, leave them in the bare plastic, and roll them out on the table.
Right.
Which, hey, if you want to play the game, then I got nothing against that. Just play the game, but why not just use cardboard tokens?
Right, yeah, exactly.
Paper hammer. That's what we use. Yeah, man, that's my brother and I used to do. We just especially for fantasy, when it was a block of troops, we just made out big rectangles of paper and said, okay, this is a block of dark elf spearmen. Yeah, and playing paper hammer, which is a lot more economical than playing actual Warhammer.
Yes, a lot less painting. So where can people find you?
On Twitter, as always, where I'm having massive screeds about Adeptus Sororitas, Lost in Space, and what else? Oh, well, no horrible dinosaur planet anymore.
Nice. And if you'd like to get in touch with Idle Red Hands, idleredhands.com is the website. You can find us both on YouTube and Twitch at Idle Red Hands, and follow us on Twitter at Idle Red Hands. If you want to get involved with the podcast, please consider becoming a patron and visit patreon.com/idleredhands. So we will see you again next week. Bye.
Later, mortals.